Pioneer was absolutely front and center on education reform, at least the part of it that I was responsible for. And first it was Steve Wilson, then it was Jim Peyser. Abigail Thernstrom was also someone who came to us through Charlie Baker and Steve Wilson. She was very instrumental in the implementation. You know, there were two parts to education reform in Massachusetts, the good part and the bad part. The bad part was, you know, a lot of more money went into the system. The good part was accountability went into the system. But I frequently said that in education, I'm morally certain that not everything that costs money works, and not everything that works costs money.
It is important to have support for education reform across the ideological spectrum. And it's also important that support for education come not just from educators, but from people whose agenda may be broader than education, but for whom education is a central issue. So I would hope that Pioneer will continue to keep a high profile and will hold the line on issues like, help hold the line on issues like standards and accountability.
The thing about education reform is it's never done. There are always more challenges ahead, and we need creative, imaginative people with no hidden agendas involved in helping to figure out and experiment and get us to the best ways of doing business for the most kids. I think that's what the Pioneer Institute helps do. We've not agreed on everything over the years. We've not had the same priorities. But Pete Peters, who, by the way, has even reached into Pittsburgh to help me since I've been superintendent here, is a voice that people, I think, realize is an honest voice. And though you will not always agree with him, you will find that what he says he is passionate about, he believes in, and he carries nobody else's water.
Here in Massachusetts, we said, wait a minute, you know, we're better than this. And everybody stood up and did their part. So whether you were anti-charter schools or pro public school, whatever, people had to give a little. And I think the great example is the board and my relationship, particularly with someone like Jim Peyser and I working together. We obviously had different backgrounds and different views, but we put those aside and found ways to work together. And I think people in Massachusetts did that, and the unions deserve credit for that, and people like Pioneer Institute that were making sure that we were doing things that were right and paying attention and putting the truth out there.
Pioneer has always been an enormous prod for change in education in this state, in pushing for choice, pushing for charter schools, pushing for increased opportunity for disadvantaged kids. Pioneer has been one of the most consistent voices for change in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And while some have seen it as being a problem or a thorn, it has been a creative and thoughtful partner in the change process that has helped us maintain the rigor of standards and maintain the rigor in the accountability system.
Well, when we got interested in the charter school movement, Pete Peters and Pioneer were already there with the Resource Center, started by Linda Brown, to support charter schools in just the ways that they needed as these small startups getting going with knowledge and focus on education, but all of the things that create a successful organization. A lot of the others they didn't know much about. So it was tremendously important and just the most creative concept to start a charter school resource center.
Ruth and I sat down and talked about education. Through that, I got a chance to meet Pete himself and in the Pioneer Institute and the fine work they were doing. Jim Peyser, here another giant, in my opinion, who I think took on the status quo and helped us in those early days. You know, we didn't have many places to go, and Jim and Pioneer provided a place for these innovators, these people, these entrepreneurs, to think of some place of how to do it, and gave us encouragement not to give up, and don't worry, we're going to help you make this thing real. And Pioneer was there. I mean, Linda Brown. I mean, all these people were there to help us. And as we move this movement forward, we're standing on the shoulders of some giants, in my opinion.
All of the work around education reform certainly in charter schools, but even across all the other sort of dimensions of education, that Pioneer in general and Pete Peters in particular have been at the center of sort of everything that's happened that's actually worked and been productive. He's one of those people who is extremely supportive, but not a micromanager. He basically takes the position that, look, you and I have an agreement around what needs to be done. I hired you in order for you to be a leader and for you to take initiative, and I'm standing behind you in your effort to do that. And I'm going to, help you put in place not only the organization that will make that work, but the resources to make progress happen. And he's just been great and consistent about that over so many years. And most people in this business, they sort of come and go, or when it's all about them in the organizations and the sort of missions that they embrace. But for Pete, it's all about the outcomes, it's all about the students, it's all about making Massachusetts a better place, and I think we all owe him a deep debt of gratitude.